Hello, and welcome to The Well. I'm your host, Dr. Brendan Arm, Doctor of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, Chinese medicine herbalist, and founder-director of Lotus Integrative Medicine in Santa Monica, California. There's a wealth of health-related information out there, and I'm joined today by this wonderful group of integrative and holistic medical doctors and practitioners to share some of our favorite wellness tips. Please let me introduce you to Bianca Rodriguez, a holistic psychotherapist, Dr. Heath McAllister, a naturopathic doctor and registered herbalist, Leona West, a clinical nutritionist and herbalist, also trained and certified in functional medicine, and Dr. Rob Krochmal, a medical doctor and a practicing physician who is board certified in family medicine, nutrition, and integrative and holistic medicine. So let's begin. Today's topic is tension. So there is a lot of, whenever we turn on the news these days, I was just driving over here now, NPR, for example, there's just so many things going on, and you can just hear and feel the tension of, what's going on politically, what's going on environmentally, what's going on socially. So I'm looking right now at Bianca. What do you do with your patients when they're coming to you with tension?
Yes. All right. I'm so glad that we're bringing up this topic because, the first thing I want to say is that, look, the news is also a corporation that needs to get views, that needs to, needs an audience. And so what catches our attention, but things that are heightened, intense, just extreme. So I do believe that part of that is going on. And I think it's important for us to be aware that, the news is also coming from someone's perspective. It's almost like when we're looking at a research study, right? If there's a reason why there's so many parameters put on research studies so that the researchers, right, don't impact the study with their own views and their own opinions. So the first thing is for all of us to know that, yes, we want to be informed, but we also need to, look sort of behind the screen of like, yes, I have to write, headlines for emails and newsletters that I send out. And I know that there's certain things that get somebody's attention more than other things. So I think that's the first thing that can help us kind of lower some of the anxiety, is to try to have a little bit more of a whole 360 view of what it is that we're consuming when it comes to news and media and the perspective of the people who are giving it to us. The other thing is, tension is not a bad thing. So I work with personal transformation, and whenever people seek out therapy, and I think also seek out any kind of medical care, it's because they're in pain. They're in pain. Something is not in balance, right? And tension, right? Psychological tension is usually, right, some kind of disruption in, sleep or in function of breathing or anxiety or ruminating or depression or whatever it is, right? There's something that's trying to get our attention, and it's trying to get our attention because it's time to change, right? And so we have this incredible unrest going on around the world, and yes, it is hitting us in every direction. We've got, civil unrest, we've got the pandemic, we've got, the economy. We have so many things coming to us at once, and I think it's like, woo, the universe is like, hey everybody, how can I get your attention? It is time to change. It's time to change. And the fact that it's happening on so many levels is, I think, it's a huge wake up call for everyone, for humanity, to start to say, wow, this is affecting me, right? Because now it's not just affecting the people that live there or that sector of the population, right? It's affecting all of us, which is leveling the playing field, which is making it so that we can all see that we're all human and that we're all in this together. And what is it that we can each do with the tension that it's bringing up to take action to do better, to do better? That's my monologue on that topic.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. It's bringing
Oh,
it back to, yeah, bringing it back to what we can do. And as you said, there's headlines grab your attention, and we can only be focused on so many things at once. So if we bring it back to ourselves, what can we do? What is this showing us about how we can change? And then, as always, meditation can be such a powerful thing, not only to ground us and to help us be aware and just see our attention in a different way, but also it's not about escaping or ignoring our thoughts or our tensions. It's more about getting us back centered into ourselves and aware of ourselves so that we can then focus on what we can do, because there are things that we can do, and a lot of times that may not be something big, but it can be in our own lives, being a little bit more caring to ourselves first of all, and caring to other people, and then maybe it does translate into your close family and friends, and then when you're able to take care of that, then you're naturally you want to reach out to your community and the larger community to make things better. So if we know that it, as you said, that this is a moment that we can use for our own transformation, then it makes it much more inspiring.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just, coming to mind when we're speaking, I can even just think of my email box, like the headlines or the subject lines and the content and the material is becoming more and more grabbing, trying to grab your attention of like, this is a must read, but there's no way you can get through, an exhaustive amount of must read emails, like in a 15-minute period, and they come in every 15 minutes. This is just like, it's just so overwhelming. So I find, I'm just hitting delete, more on these emails, and I'm just not going to read through everything that seems to be, this is burning down, and this is, brand new, and this is, have to do today, and like it makes me think of, I've had different people in my life where, some would be on the one end of the spectrum where they would say there never is an emergency, meaning no matter how urgent it seems, it never is. And then there are other side of the pendulum is everything is an emergency, and there's constant emergencies or constant urgent things. So I was just speaking with some of my staff yesterday about that, and I don't really agree with either. I do believe there are cases when some urgent things or emergency case things do come up. So I do want to, as best as I can, be present for those, but then try to also be mindful of the things that seem urgent or seem emergency, which are causing a lot of tension, and just say, hey, you know what, those really aren't. So again,
Critical thinking.
Okay, critical thinking, or like the middle path, like the Buddha's middle path. Like you can't, you could go towards pure starvation to try to get to a deeper spiritual level. And the Buddha found, or Siddhartha Gautama found that wasn't very serving for, his spiritual practice either. Nor was going towards pure the pleasures, because the desires, once you keep feeling the desires, there's always more coming there too. So either side of those examples don't really work either. So I think then, that spiritual teacher was talking about the middle path. So I try to do that critical thinking, well said, Bianca, of like finding out which one is this. And I guess breath work has been what I use when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Mindfulness breathing to try to maybe let good oxygen come in so I can do critical thinking.
Pausing. That pause is where all of our choice lives, and urgency is a wonderful manipulation tactic. Having worked in treatment centers with a lot of people who are struggling with addiction and are really in a desperate state, oftentimes and kids will do this too sometimes. They'll be like, I gotta go to Susie's house and I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And you're like, oh, okay. And it makes you feel like you have to answer them right away, but really being like, is this really an emergency that you gotta have a sleepover tonight? Like, let me pause. And so we have to be good parents to ourselves, and know that we are getting bombarded with all this stuff. And how can we pause? And this is where meditation and mindfulness comes in, is that it trains our brains to pause. And in that pause, you have a choice. This is right. Viktor Frankl talked about this, is you have a choice. And in that choice is where your power lives.
Well, I think it's kind of to the point of where this concept of passive news gathering and active news gathering, and I think you could apply that to what we were talking about just at the start of, there's so much news and information, and this is not the time to be a passive news consumer, but to be an active. But we can also take that active, and if you want to call it active or discernment, but really, applying a filter, but not a filter where it narrows our own kind of narrowed place, but from the standpoint that we want to actively engage in specific areas that we want to dive more into to understand and keep certain things at bay. We don't have to consume it all at once. And having boundaries, because there is this blurring of boundaries even more so now in so many ways, and setting boundaries in our lives and actively seeking out health practices. And it can be so simple, which is don't eat your lunch in front of your computer. Sit down and have a sacred meal, create sacred moments. Because if we don't actively create these sacred moments around these simple health practices that we can be doing every day that are just immediately available, our breath, a meal where we're putting attention to it, and there's not, several things we want to try to do at once, then these things help kind of restore that sense of peace and balance and center. And then when we're taking in these things, we're taking them in from that centered place or that middle ground. And we are in an environment where being in the middle is not very sexy right now. It's like being on either extreme of things is kind of where it's at. But we know we don't feel quite right when we're, hanging from the extremes. So practicing those simple intention, those simple things that we're putting intention into. And then the last thing also is to put our feet into the earth, right? If you want a grounding, earthing, but just so much with the lockdown, we all kind of maybe to a certain extent infrequently get in touch with the earth, but even now, and talk about immediately feeling centered or grounded. It's like, can we all maybe, take our shoes off and go stick our feet into the ground for a minute? That's my suggestion.
I think you guys all nailed it in the sense that, we don't realize that how much choice we actually do have with how we respond to a situation or a circumstance. That Bianca, like creating that space, I usually think about it as having like a buffer. You have a buffer, and that in that time period, you get to decide what you do with that information you've just received. So I think creating a buffer, Rob, you mentioned mindfulness. I think that's a wonderful way to create some space, to create that, that buffering space, that time of decisions, so that you're not just jumping to the conclusion of the 100 emails that you're receiving about, the injustice of Breonna Taylor, or, the fact that they're going to try and stuff some person on the Supreme Court, and, the other side. It's all this, so much pressured stress. And if you can take a moment and sit in that quiet space and realize that we all have personal choices in our lives. We can all affect the world in our little corner of the world. We can affect the world in positive ways, but not from a place of reactivity, but from a place of vision and, decision making, grounded decision making. I think it's so important to actually, stand in your power, not stand in your fear or your anger, or, you're actually standing in the core of who you are. And I think it's easy to lose sight of that when we do get inundated with news and 100 emails a day. I agree with you, Brendan. I think we all have to pick and choose how much news is stuffed on us. And I agree with you, Leona. You have to seek out what you think is the best grounded, balanced information. Now, in terms of bringing this into a larger health context, I think that some things that can help you create almost like a biologic buffer or space in your daily life, or there's a whole class of herbs called adaptogenic herbs, right? And adaptogenic herbs help your body compensate for stress. And that's biologic stress and it's psychological stress. And they can help with sleep and they can help with energy. They're wonderful balancing, harmonizing herbs. So, classic one would be ginseng. Other ones would be like rhodiola, ashwagandha, schizandra chinensis. There's a whole bunch, holy basil, a whole bunch of these herbal remedies that from a biologic standpoint can help your body not break down from stress and kind of, compensate for the stresses that are being thrown at you. I would also say that sleep is such a critical thing right now. If I'm not fully sleeping, I don't feel right and I'm reactive. And if someone cuts me off on the road, I get pissed off. And like, if I sleep right, that stuff is like water off a duck's back. So making sure to prioritize sleep, number one, but number two, again, they're great sleep aids. An herb that's a favorite of mine that I love for deep dreamful sleep is passion flower, and you can get it as a tea, and it's not bad tasting, and it's, again, if we can help clear out some of this chatter unconsciously in our lives, but also some of the chatter in our subconscious lives through unwinding things in our dreams and getting deep restful sleep, I think, there you can hit multiple ways to stabilize your own personal system and feel like you have that personal power taken back. You're actually making decisions from a position of strength rather than of reactivity.
Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have a topic you would like to learn more about, let us know with a comment on social media. And also don't forget to subscribe to our The Well YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and please join us next time for more wellness tips. Remember, regardless of where we are, our resources in the well are limitless.